You probably imagine the life of a medieval blacksmith as sparks flying heroically in slow motion, the clank of metal, the respect of the village. But the real story? It was scorch your eyebrows heat, toxic fumes, and deafening noise. If these kinds of real talk history stories are your thing, hitting like or subscribe would be honestly so cool of you. And seriously, drop a comment with where you're listening from and the time that still blows my mind, imagining someone in South America and someone in Northern Europe hearing the same story at the same minute. All right, tonight we're cranking up the furnace, grabbing the biggest mental hammer we can find, and digging into why it really sucked to be a medieval blacksmith. So relax those shoulders and let's step into a world where the metal was hot.
You were born into the noble, soot-covered lineage of medieval blacksmiths. No crowns, no land, no fancy titles, just the family forge, anvil-shaped blisters, and the scent of roasted iron baked into your baby blanket. From the moment you can walk without tripping into the fire pit, you're expected to help. By age 6, you're officially your father's apprentice, which is a polite medieval way of saying tiny unpaid assistant with zero rights and permanent soot streaks on your face, your toys, tongs, your playground, the dirt floor next to a furnace hot enough to cook your eyebrows. While other village kids are chasing chickens and skipping stones, you're learning how not to die next to molten metal. Fun games include guess how hot this is with your hand. Hold a hammer until your arms fall off and try not to cry when you mess up the nail again. Your father, a blacksmith, is a terrifying muscular man whose entire vocabulary consists of sighs, grunts, and the phrase, "hit it harder." He's got hands like tree bark and a permanent scowl etched from decades of smoke exposure and tax collectors. He teaches you everything: how to shape iron, how to fuel the fire, how to keep your mouth shut when a knight insults your work. You don't ask questions, you just observe, absorb, and obey. Mostly because asking questions results in a flying horseshoe and a week of silent treatment. Holidays? Nice idea. You don't get those. The forge doesn't take breaks, and neither do you. Someone always needs something sharpened, fixed, or reforged. You learn quickly that free time is just the time between one job and the next. And while you're technically learning a trade, what you're really learning is pain tolerance, heat resistance, and how to fall asleep standing up. By the time you're 10, you already smell like iron, swear like a miner, and have arms strong enough to carry water buckets that weigh more than your dog. Assuming the dog didn't run away from the noise 2 years ago, this is your life now. Welcome to the family business. Hope you like sweat, smoke, and 70 years of back pain. If you thought you'd get a few good years of playtime before the hammer came down, think again. Childhood in the medieval blacksmith's world is more of a suggestion than a phase. The moment you can lift a bucket without toppling over, you're drafted. Forget games, toys, or any concept of fun. Your playroom is a smoke-stained shed filled with sharp objects and open flames. Your jungle gym, a rack of tongs next to a pit of glowing coal. One wrong step and you're getting an unscheduled lesson in how long your skin can sizzle before Dad notices. Your official job title might be apprentice, but what it really means is do everything no one else wants to do and get yelled at anyway. You stoke the fire, pump the bellows, sweep the floor, clean the tools, restack the coal, and try not to get impaled by a falling horseshoe. All before breakfast you get paid in food, stern nods, and the occasional grunt of mild approval, which in blacksmith language means, "You didn't completely ruin that today." Meanwhile, the village kids you once knew are out in the fields, maybe throwing sticks or learning how to milk goats. You envy them, even if they do smell like cheese and manure. They might grow up to be farmers or shepherds, humble jobs, sure, but ones that involve fewer glowing weapons and surprise burns. You, on the other hand, are learning to make nails by hand. Nails. Thousands of them bent, twisted and reheated again and again until they're straight enough to hold some lord's chicken coop together. If you're lucky, your father lets you swing a hammer on your own right after he points out every single thing you're doing wrong. And don't even think about saying, "I'm tired." That phrase doesn't exist in the forge. Fatigue is weakness. Burnout's for candles. You keep swinging, keep sweating, keep smiling, or at least keep from crying where anyone can see. Because in the eyes of your master, who is also your dad, you're not a child anymore. You're a blacksmith in training, and the training never ends. The forge isn't just where you work, it's your entire existence. It dominates your senses, reshapes your muscles, and rewires your brain. By the time you're in your teens, it doesn't just feel like a place. It feels like a living creature, a hot, smoky, temperamental beast that you must feed, control, and fear. You know the sounds by heart. The bellows wheezing, the iron hissing in the water, the sharp clang of hammer on metal echoing like a war drum. There's a rhythm to it, like some brutal medieval symphony, and your body moves in time with it, whether you're awake or half asleep. You stop noticing the heat after a while. That's not because it gets easier, it's because you've simply accepted it. Like gravity or taxes, you know which stones get too hot to sit on, which coals burn quickest, and which parts of the floor are secretly trying to murder your feet. Your skin darkens from smoke, not sun. Your clothes, the same soot-stained tunic and leather apron you wear every day, smell like a mix of scorched wool, grease and desperation. You don't own many things, but you do own this forge. Not on paper, mind you. Your father still technically runs it, but in practice it owns you. You start to forget what silence sounds like. The hiss, the clang, the crackle, it's constant. When the forge does go quiet, it's almost unsettling. You find yourself twitching, like you're missing a beat in a song you've been forced to memorize since childhood. Your friends, assuming you've kept any, barely see you. He's probably at the forge becomes your default status. You're not a blacksmith. You're the forge, a two-legged extension of fire and steel. And strangely, a part of you starts to love it. Not the burns, not the blisters, but the feeling when the shape finally comes out right, when the horseshoe fits, when the blade gleams, when the metal bends to your will. For a moment you're not just a kid covered in soot. You're a creator, a crafter, a necessary gear in the medieval machine. Then the moment passes. The next order arrives and the fire roars again. Time to get back to work. By the time your friends are just starting to grow into their teenage limbs, yours already feel like they've been through a siege. While they're getting taller and stronger, you're getting stooped, scarred and stiff. Your arms are thick, but not in a heroic knight lifting a sword way, more like teenager who's been repeatedly attacked by anvils. Your back, a tragedy, hunched from hauling metal and leaning over the forge for hours a day. Your knees, they creak when you crouch. Your shoulders pop every time you lift a hammer, which is every few seconds. So now that's just part of your personal soundtrack. And your hands. Let's talk about your hands. You used to have fingers. Now you have iron-tipped claws. They're blistered, cracked and stained with soot so deep even the Nile couldn't wash it off. Cuts are common, burns are daily, and your fingernails. Half of them are permanently blackened or missing. When someone offers you bread, you hold it with the same delicacy you'd use to cradle a hedgehog made of glass. Because every knuckle already feels like it's been cursed. There's no such thing as recovery time. Pull a muscle, keep working, twist your wrist, use the other one. The forge doesn't care that your elbow is screaming. Iron doesn't wait politely while you rest. And let's not forget, you'd think with a day full of hammering and hauling you'd pass out easily. But no, your muscles ache so bad you can't lie still. Your ears are still ringing from 10 hours of clanging, and your arms twitch with phantom swings like you're sparring ghosts in your dreams. You ache in places you didn't know could ache. You smell like pain. Even your pain has pain. And what does your father say about this? Good. You're learning. In a strange way, you are. You're not growing despite the pain. You're growing because of it. You're being hardened like the very metal you work, shaped by heat, pressure, and repetition. But make no mistake, by the time you hit adulthood, your body feels like it already lived 2 lives and died halfway through both. And the worst part, you're just getting started. In most jobs, smoke is a problem. In your job, it's a co-worker, and a particularly rude one. The forge isn't just hot, it's a choking chamber, and every breath you take comes seasoned with the fine aroma of coal dust, scorched metal, ash and regret. If you can see clearly more than 6 feet ahead, congratulations. Someone forgot to light the fire. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof that leaks more smoke in than it lets out. You try opening a window. There is no window. Just soot black walls, your father's coughing, and the occasional gust of wind that blows everything into your eyes. Anyway, your lungs. Let's just say they've entered a long-term toxic relationship with smoke. At first it burns, then it irritates. Then one day it just becomes normal. Coughing fits, part of the rhythm, black mucus. Not ideal. But hey, at least it's consistent. You've reached the point where clean air feels suspicious. Even your voice changes. You start sounding like a 60-year-old goat farmer who drinks boiling tar. Words are scratchier, breaths are shorter, and your throat always feels like it's hosting a dust storm. But you keep working because you have to. And it's not just the smoke from the fire. There's metal dust from grinding, oil fumes from quenching, and sometimes burnt leather, charred wood, or whatever unfortunate material just dropped into the coals. You've probably inhaled 3 different types of poison before noon. Protective gear, please. A rag tied around your face is the best you can do. And even that gets sweaty, gross, and somehow smells worse than the smoke itself. You take it off and suddenly it's a little harder to breathe. But at least you're not gagging on your own sweat. Long-term damage, of course. Asthma, black lung, early death, all part of the career package. But you're not thinking long-term. You're thinking about finishing that gate hinge before your father notices how crooked it is. In the world of a medieval blacksmith, air is just another burden. You don't breathe to survive, you breathe to keep hammering. By now you've developed an intimate relationship with your tools, mostly based on pain, necessity, and mutual disrespect. Your hammer, it's basically an extension of your arm. You've named it. You've cursed it. You've swung it so many times that your shoulder now clicks when you raise it like a haunted maraca. But without it, you're just a sweaty guy standing in a smoke-filled hut. The hammer makes you a blacksmith and also makes you bleed regularly. Then there's your tongs, clumsy, hot, and always pinching you at the exact wrong moment. You've burned your fingertips more times than you've successfully picked up anything. The iron slips, the grip fails. You yell. Your dad tells you to grip it like you mean it. You consider throwing them into the fire just to teach them a lesson. Your chisel, it used to be sharp. Now it's mostly a suggestion of a blade because you've used it to shape, split, scrape, and occasionally pry open stuck doors when your neighbours lock brakes. Files, awls, punch tools, rivet sets. Your tool bench looks like a medieval torture rack. And honestly, it kind of is. You've been jabbed, crushed, pinched, sliced, and impaled by every item you own. Your fingers have memory now. They flinch at the mere sight of a new tool. Your apron. It's meant to protect you, and it sort of does. If by protect you mean catch hot metal shards and hold them close to your body like a smouldering hug, it's more scorched than stitched, and the leather stiffens like a corpse every winter. And yet, despite all this, you care for these tools like they're family. You sharpen them, oil them, line them up each night, because if one breaks, you're done. You can't work, you can't earn, you can't eat, no tool, no income. So yes, your tools are your life, but don't be fooled. They've also declared war on your fingers' spine and sanity. Every day they whisper, "We help you survive, but we'll also slowly destroy you." And you say, "Yeah, that sounds about right." Now pass the hammer. You don't wear a crown, carry a sword, or lead armies. But without you, the village stops functioning by Tuesday. You're the blacksmith, and everyone needs you all the time for everything. You're the medieval equivalent of customer service, tech support, and roadside assistance rolled into one soot-covered figure who smells like smoke and shame. The knight needs a new sword. You make it. The farmer breaks a plough. You fix it. A monk's bell cracks. A baker's oven door jams. A shepherd's gate latch won't close. Guess who gets called? That's right, you. Every single time, and they all act like you've just been waiting for their problem, they show up unannounced, mid-swing, covered in mud and entitlement. "I know you're busy," they say, "but could you just? Could you just?" The phrase that haunts you. But here's the best part, you never get thanked. They assume it's your duty, that you were born to serve. If their hoe works, their door closes, or their shield holds, they nod and walk away like you were the lucky one. As if you should be honoured to repair their rusty bucket at sunset for half a loaf of stale bread. Payment often inconsistent, sometimes in coin, sometimes in goods, sometimes in promises they forget by next market day. One man paid you with a dead chicken good for soup. It wasn't. You're also the go-to fixer for problems that don't belong to you. Bent hinges from someone sitting on a gate. You fix it. Broken dagger from a drunk fight. You fix it. Mysterious piece of iron no one can identify but absolutely must be fixed. Yep, still you. Yet when the village praises anyone, it's the knight, the priest, or the miller with the extra fat goat. You, your background noise, a necessity, a reliable tool, not a person. But here's the secret. You know they couldn't last a week without your work. Their fields would stall, their homes would fall apart, their horses would limp. And while they may not sing songs about you, their entire world is quietly held together by your hands. You'd think peace would be good news. No raiders, no bandits, no screaming noblemen demanding a new sword by sundown. But for you, peace is terrible for business, because you, the blacksmith, may work on ploughs and hinges, but what really pays the bills is war. When there's fighting, everyone needs you. Weapons, armour, arrowheads by the hundreds. Even horseshoes wear down faster under the weight of panicked cavalry charges. You're flooded with work. The forge burns brighter. The coins roll in. You may be exhausted, but your belly is full and your debt to the alehouse momentarily forgotten. But then the war ends. The local lord declares a truce. The knights stop marching and suddenly your orders vanish. No more swords, no more helmets, just a farmer asking if you can sharpen a sickle and maybe accept 3 onions as payment. And sure, you can make household goods, cauldrons, door handles, cooking spits, but there's not much profit in it. Everyone wants you to work like a wizard, but they want to pay you like a stable boy. You become a negotiator, a beggar, and a merchant all at once, haggling for decent wages like your forge is a stall at market. And don't even think about raising your prices. People look at you like you just cursed their cow. But you're just hammering metal, they say, as if molten iron bends itself into shape while singing church hymns. You start to miss the chaos. Not the blood, not the burning villages, but the steady flow of orders, the purpose, the rush. When knights lined up outside your forge with dented shields and coin purses ready, you mattered. Now you're making keys for locked doors no one locks, patching pots that should have been thrown out, and fixing tools so old they belong in a museum, not a field. Peace for everyone else means safety and rest. For you it means economic anxiety and hunger. And deep down, though you'd never say it out loud, part of you whispers, wouldn't mind a small skirmish, just a little one, maybe a minor border dispute. Because when swords break, you eat. Some jobs have an end, a clear finish line, a task completed followed by rest, applause, or at least a warm bowl of stew. Blacksmithing is not one of those jobs. Your work is never done. Not today, not tomorrow, not even in your dreams. You fix one thing and 3 more break. Patch a gate hinge. The wheel falls off the cart. Finish a batch of nails. Someone shows up demanding 10 more, but longer this time. And also, I can't pay you until harvest. You rise before the sun and go to sleep long after it disappears behind the trees, and even then, your brain keeps hammering. You dream of bellows, sparks, and that one customer who still owes you a half-dozen eggs and a thank you. Even the quick jobs never are. A villager walks in holding a mangled rake. It just needs a little fixing, they say. But you know, that's 2 hours of reshaping, reheating, hammering, and nodding politely as they ask, "Is it ready yet?" every 5 minutes. And just when you think you can finally sit, maybe drink something that isn't lukewarm and smoky, your apprentice comes running. The friar's ill. You need to shoe the horse. Of course you do, because you're the blacksmith. And around here, blacksmith means everyone else's last resort. The forge demands attention constantly. The fire won't stoke itself. The tools rust if ignored. Your anvil shifts in the summer heat. Your bellows crack in the winter cold. Everything is either falling apart or threatening to. Even holidays don't stop the work. Sunday is technically a day of rest. Unless, of course, someone's ox cart breaks on the way to market. Then suddenly you're in your apron, half awake, praying the priest doesn't walk by while you're hammering on the Lord's Day. You don't keep a to-do list. That implies there's a point when it'll all be crossed off. There isn't. Because blacksmithing isn't a job. It's a cycle. Work, fix, repeat, until your body gives out or your hammer does. And the worst part, you kind of love it. You'd think that pounding hot iron all day would earn you at least 2 things: a good meal and a solid night's sleep. Wrong. In the life of a medieval blacksmith, food and rest aren't guaranteed. They're luxuries, like clean water or polite customers. Let's talk food first. You work from sun up to sun down, burning calories like a runaway horse. And what do you get? A piece of coarse bread, a bowl of cold pottage that might contain yesterday's turnip, and maybe a bit of salted pork if it's a special day, which it isn't. You eat standing up, one hand still clutching tongs, the other shielding your food from the forge's ash. Meals are rushed. Conversations are grunts. And if someone knocks on the door mid-bite because their latch is stuck, guess what? That stew's going cold. You don't eat to enjoy, you eat to survive. Fuel in, hammer out. Now, let's talk sleep. Or the cruel parody of it. When you finally crawl into bed, your hands are throbbing. Your back feels like it lost a bar fight and your ears are still ringing from a full day of iron symphonies. Your bed, a straw-stuffed sack that's either too lumpy, too flat, or full of mysterious crawling things. Your blanket, a scorched wool sheet that smells faintly of forge smoke, old ale, and regret. And just as your eyes are closing, your brain remembers that order you forgot to finish, or that hinge that cracked weird, or the payment you still haven't received for that wagon wheel 3 weeks ago. Sleep becomes a negotiation. You lie awake, tossing, turning, calculating how long you can delay repairs without someone banging on your door at dawn. And don't forget the midnight surprises. Someone's horse throws a shoe, a storm rips a door off its hinges, or a noble's sword urgently needs sharpening before a hunt. Because obviously, you don't need rest. You learn to survive on scraps and snatches, stolen bites, half naps, and sheer stubbornness. Because in your world, productivity comes before nourishment, deadlines before dozing. Food and sleep aren't breaks from the job. They're intermissions between hammer swings. You'll eat when you can, sleep when you're allowed, and hope the fire doesn't go out while you're dreaming. There was a time when your hands were soft once, long ago. Maybe as a child. Now, they're ruined. Your fingers have become tools themselves, stiff, swollen, cracked, and calloused to the point where they barely feel anything, except when it hurts. You can't hold a quill. You can barely lace your own boots, but you can grab red-hot tongs with the casual confidence of someone who's been burned so often. Pain has lost its meaning. Every joint in your hands pops when you move. Your knuckles look like they've been mugged by a hammer. Your palms are a map of blisters. Old, new, layered like tree rings. Need to figure out what season it is. Just check the blister count. More than 5. It's summer. You've lost fingernails more than once. Some came off clean, others didn't. You once crushed your thumb so badly it turned black for 2 weeks. You didn't stop working. You just switched hands and grunted more than usual. Cuts are constant. Sometimes it's a chipped edge. Sometimes a file bites you. Sometimes the iron fights back. Every week something leaks blood. You wrap it in a scrap of cloth, curse under your breath, and keep working. Worse still are the burns. Some are mild, little reminders that iron doesn't forgive. Others are worse, the kind that sizzle, bubble, and leave scars that tell their own stories. You've branded yourself more times than a cattle farmer, and at this point you're not even mad about it. You're just used to it. Your grip strength is the only thing that's improved. You can crush walnuts like they owe you money. But dexterity, that's gone. You drop things. Your fingers shake when cold. You're 30 and have the hands of a 70-year-old knight who lost 3 wars and now plays tavern dice for soup. But despite it all, these hands are what keep you alive. They shape swords, fix hinges, and hold the hammer that holds your reputation. They hurt constantly, but they work. Because in this life, doesn't matter how broken your body is as long as you can still swing. Let's be honest, you don't smell great. Actually, you haven't smelled clean since you were 5. The moment you became your father's apprentice, your personal fragrance took a permanent turn toward unwashed ashtray, mixed with burnt bacon and desperation. Welcome to blacksmith life, where no matter how hard you scrub, you smell like fire forever. The forge burns all day and so do you. The smoke seeps into your clothes, your hair, your skin. Your sweat doesn't even smell like regular sweat anymore. It's more like smoked meat left out during a warm spring. You could bathe in theory, but baths are rare. Water is cold, and you're working 6 days a week covered in soot, grease, and cold dust before the sun's even fully up. So, what's the point? You'd be filthy again by breakfast. Your clothes are no help. You wear the same singed tunic and scorched leather apron every day. They haven't been truly clean since the last festival, and even then someone spilled ale on them before noon. Now they just sort of hang on your body like a protective layer of hardened funk. You try perfume, forget it. It lasts 10 minutes before the forge eats it alive. Flowers wilt near you, bread goes stale faster. Cats hiss when you pass, and the worst part, people notice. You walk into the tavern, and the crowd parts like the Red Sea. The innkeeper already knows to seat you in the corner near a window if possible. Not out of courtesy, but survival. No one wants to share a bench with a human embodiment of a burnt fence post. Still, you take it in stride. A little shame is better than going unnoticed. You're known. People say that's the blacksmith with a mix of respect and nasal discomfort. You may not be the most charming man in town, but you're definitely the most aromatic. Besides, smelling like fire means you've been working. Smelling like iron means you've been crafting. And smelling like sweat-soaked leather dipped in soot and regret. Well, that just means you're a professional. You didn't choose this life. The forge chose you through your father's calloused hands, and the iron expectations passed down like a rusty heirloom. And now you're doing the same. Your son doesn't play with wooden swords or run wild through the fields. He fetches coal, pumps the bellows, holds the tongs steady while sparks rain down and you mutter, "Don't flinch." He's maybe 7, but already smells like burnt metal and wet burlap. You feel a bit guilty, but only a bit because you're not being cruel. You're preparing him. This is the trade. This is survival. He watches you swing the hammer, and you see the way he stares, wide-eyed, half in awe, half in fear. You remember that look? It's the same one you used to give your father back when he seemed like a mountain. Now you understand. He wasn't made of stone, just exhaustion and responsibility. You teach the boy everything, how to gauge heat by colour, how to tap, not slam, how to listen to the metal. You shout sometimes, more out of habit than anger. Hold it right. That's too cold. Don't cry. It's only a burn. You try to soften things when you can. A story by the fire. A piece of dried fruit when you can afford it. But tenderness doesn't last long in the forge. There's too much work to do. His hands will soon look like yours. His back will ache before his voice cracks. He'll learn to sleep through ringing ears and wake up before sunrise without being told. He'll outgrow his shirt, but not the burn marks. And when you finally fall apart, knees, shoulders, lungs, he'll carry the hammer you can no longer lift. People might say it's unfair that the cycle should end, but this is how it's always been. A lineage of soot, steel, and survival. You're not just passing down a trade, you're passing down a legacy. A forge that never cools. So yes, you raise your son to do it all again. Not because you're cruel, but because someone has to keep the fire going. You've spent a lifetime standing too close to fire, swinging too much iron and breathing too little clean air. It was never a question of if your body would fail, just when. And now it's happening. Your knees creak like wooden doors in a storm. Your back refuses to straighten. Your fingers, once strong enough to bend steel, now tremble when you lift a cup. The forge still roars, but your arms won't answer. The hammer feels heavier every day, as if it knows it's nearly time to leave your grip. You don't go out in a blaze of glory. There's no heroic finale, no ballad. You simply slow down. You start handing tasks to your son. You sit more, watch more. He asks you questions, and for the first time you struggle to remember the answers. The villagers start going to him now. They still nod respectfully when they pass you, but they talk to your boy. He's the one with the calloused hands now. The burns are fresh on him. The ache of the craft has shifted to new shoulders, and quietly you're proud. You were never wealthy. You never owned land or books or fine clothes, but you were necessary. You kept swords sharp, wheels turning, gates swinging, and farms working. The world didn't thank you often, but it moved because of you. You likely won't see 50. Most blacksmiths don't. The damage piles up. Lungs blackened from years of smoke. Joints ground down like iron on stone. Hearts worn out from constant heat and effort. But when you're gone, your work stays. Nails in church doors, blades at noble hips, horses sure and ready to ride. You leave behind no titles, just tools, scars, and a son with a hammer. And that, in your world, is enough. They may bury you in a simple grave. No gold, no statue, just a name carved in wood and a forge that still burns in your memory. But every clang that echoes through the village long after you're gone, that's the sound of you still working. You were never a knight. You didn't ride into battle with banners flying or wear polished armour that caught the sunlight. But you made that armour. You didn't farm the land, but you made the ploughs that carved it. You didn't bake the bread, but you forged the oven doors. You didn't build the castle, but every nail in its beams, every hinge on its gates, they were touched by your fire. You were a blacksmith, and in the medieval world that meant everything. While nobles argued and kings changed crowns, you stood by your forge day in, day out, shaping the world piece by piece. 1,000 small things, rivets, hooks, braces, buckles, nothing that draws a crowd, everything that holds the world together. Your life was loud, but your legacy is quiet. No one wrote songs about your hammer. No bard praised your tongs. But every working wheel, every unbroken sword, every barn door that swings instead of falling, that was you. People walked past your forge and saw smoke. They smelled sweat and soot and assumed that was all. But inside was a symphony of heat and steel, of creation and endurance. You didn't just forge iron. You forged civilization. One horseshoe, one blade, one nail at a time. And now, long after your hands have gone still, the fire continues. Your son lifts your hammer. Your grandson learns the heat. Your name might fade from memory, but the tools you built carry on, passed from hand to hand, generation to generation. You were never crowned, never honoured, never celebrated. But without you, nothing moved. No carts rolled, no armies marched, no homes were secured. You were the foundation beneath the history books, the ember glowing beneath the stories of kings. And that matters more than anyone ever said aloud. Because in a world made of wood, stone and willpower, you were the fire. the silent spark that turned raw ore into progress. You weren't just part of the world, you kept it turning. Long before alchemy was associated with secretive European laboratories and robed mystics whispering over bubbling flasks. It was something far more sacred and far more ancient. Its true origin lies not in medieval Europe, but in the shimmering heat of ancient Egypt, where transformation wasn't a trick of science, but a divine principle etched into every corner of life and death. The ancient Egyptians had a word for it, chemia, derived from chem, meaning black land. It referred to the dark, fertile soil left behind by the annual flooding of the Nile. But this wasn't just a poetic nickname for their geography. It held deep, spiritual meaning. To the Egyptians, black was the colour of potential, of richness, of raw matter waiting to be transformed. And so the land of Egypt itself became a metaphor for the transformative power of nature. This is where the word alchemy, alchemia, would eventually be born. But alchemy in Egypt wasn't just about turning base metals into gold. That obsession came later. For the ancient Egyptians, alchemy was everywhere. It was in the ritual of mummification, where the body of the dead was carefully preserved, transfigured and prepared for eternity. It was in the temples where priests blended oils, herbs and minerals into sacred elixir. It was in the stars, in the soil, in the very act of cooking bread and brewing beer. Transformation, they believed, was the language of the gods. In fact, Egyptian alchemy was never purely physical. It was spiritual at its core. To change something outwardly, you first had to understand it inwardly. This idea would echo through the centuries in alchemical texts from all cultures. Some legends say that these early Egyptian alchemists were guided by a divine figure, this-headed god of wisdom, magic, and the moon. According to lore, to reveal the secrets of creation, transformation, and the soul's journey beyond death. These secrets, it was said, were written on a mystical object known as the Emerald Tablet. But before we get to that, we have to recognise one truth. Alchemy began not as a quest for gold, but as a sacred science of life. In Egypt, it was the fire that gave rise to all others, and everything that came after, from Persia to Paris, would trace its roots back to this ancient, fertile land. If ancient Egypt was the birthplace of alchemy, then was its divine midwife. In Egyptian mythology, Death wasn't just a god. He was the god of knowledge, magic, writing, time, and the very laws of the universe. With the head of an ibis and a moon disk above him, Thoth stood for equilibrium. And in a world obsessed with order and transformation, he was the sacred scribe of all hidden truths. According to myth, Thkemi, he embodied it. The Egyptians believed he had authored thousands of books filled with divine wisdom. Most of these were never meant for mortal eyes, but one fragment of his knowledge would change history, the mysterious Emerald Tablet. Whispers of the Emerald Tablet have echoed through time like a riddle carved into the bones of civilization. Said to be inscribed in green crystal or emerald stone, the tablet was a short poetic text, barely a dozen lines long. Yet those lines were believed to hold the ultimate key to transforming matter, spirit, and reality itself. It begins with a sentence that has haunted thinkers for centuries. That which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is above. This simple line, the principle of correspondence, suggests that the microcosm and the macrocosm are mirrors. What happens in the heavens happens within the human soul. What changes in the lab echoes in the cosmos. The Emerald Tablet didn't hand out instructions for making gold. It handed out a worldview. It said the world is not fixed. Everything can be refined, elevated, transmuted. Not just lead into gold, but ignorance into wisdom, chaos into harmony, the mortal into the divine. The tablet also speaks of the one thing, the source of all creation, and how it rises from the earth and descends from the sky, carrying the power of all things in its wake. Many saw this one thing as the philosopher's stone, others as the soul, the ether, or even consciousness itself. But perhaps the greatest mystery wasn't the content of the tablet, but who could understand it. You had to be more than a scholar. You had to be a seeker. And it was this sacred riddle gifted by Thoth that would survive the fall of Egypt and pass like a torch across borders and ages, first to Persia, then to the world. As Egypt's golden age faded, alchemy did not vanish. It migrated. Travelling along trade routes carried by scribes, mystics and conquerors, it passed into the hands of another ancient empire, Persia. But this was not merely a transfer of knowledge. In Persia, alchemy underwent a transformation of its own, one that blended spiritual fire with philosophical depth. The backbone of Persian alchemical thought was deeply shaped by Zoroastrianism, one of the world's oldest monotheistic religions. At its heart was the concept of duality, a constant battle between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, purity and corruption. Fire, the purest of all elements in Zoroastrian belief, wasn't just a symbol, it was sacred. It burned in temples representing divine wisdom, and that fire would light the crucibles of early Persian alchemists. But while spiritual ideas burned bright, it was a Greek-Egyptian mystic named Zosimos of Panopolis who gave alchemy its first real voice, one that still echoes today. Living in Roman Egypt around the 3rd or 4th century CE, Zemos was no ordinary philosopher. His writings fused technical descriptions of furnaces, stills and elixir with strange visionary journeys. In his most famous dream, he sees himself dismembered, burned and transformed in an alchemical furnace. But rather than horror, this vision is divine. It's the symbolic death of the self, the purification of the soul. Zemos didn't think alchemy was just about changing metals. He believed the alchemist must themselves be transformed. Just as base matter must be broken down before becoming gold, the alchemist had to suffer, purify, and transcend. In his words, alchemy was a mystery of spirit and matter alike. He introduced the idea of spiritual alchemy, a concept far ahead of his time. Zemos's writings are full of strange symbols, lions devouring serpents, men melting into coloured vapours, divine beings emerging from fire. These weren't chemical notes, they were metaphors for the soul's journey toward perfection. Zosimos was also one of the first to stress that true knowledge couldn't be bought or memorised. It had to be earned. The path of the alchemist was a path of discipline, suffering and revelation. His influence would ripple across centuries and continents, and though many of his texts were lost or misunderstood, one thing was clear. Alchemy was no longer just a proto-science. It had become a sacred philosophy. As the embers of ancient knowledge flickered across the remnants of Egypt, Greece and Persia, a new empire rose, and with it, a golden age of wisdom. Under the banner of Islam from the 8th to the 13th century, a vast intellectual renaissance began. While Europe descended into the Dark Ages, cities like Baghdad, Cairo and Cordoba became sanctuaries for philosophy, mathematics, astronomy and alchemy. At the heart of this revival stood a man whose name would become legend, Jabir ibn Hayyan, known in the West as GBA. More than a chemist, more than a philosopher, Jabir was a fusion of both, often called the father of chemistry. His contributions to alchemy were so profound that they laid the foundation for modern science itself. Working in the courts of the Abbasid Caliphate in the 8th century, Jabir approached alchemy not as mysticism, but as a structured, testable discipline. He introduced laboratory methods still recognizable today: distillation, crystallization, sublimation. He invented new instruments, refined acids, and wrote over 100 texts, blending philosophy with chemical experimentation. But he didn't abandon the spiritual roots of the craft. Far from it. Jabir believed that everything in the universe was composed of combinations of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water, and infused with spiritual qualities. His system added a complex blend of numerology, astrology, and symbolism. In his view, every transformation in the material world mirrored a deeper transformation in the soul. Jabir also introduced the idea of balance, or manisan, as the key to alchemy. Just as the body must be balanced to remain healthy,